So tonight is the 14th of August, 2011, and this is the second night we're speaking on the Udana, the third book of the Khuddaka Nikaya. Tonight also happens to be the fifth full moon night, so 1 month of Vasa has passed, less than 2 months more. Okay, now we come to chapter 3. Nandavagga 3.1 Kamma Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, a certain monk was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, mindful and clearly comprehending, enduring without complaint feelings that were painful, acute, sharp and severe, the ripening of former karma. The Lord saw that monk sitting cross-legged not far away, enduring without complaint feelings that were painful, acute, sharp and severe, the ripening of former karma or action. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. A monk who has left behind all action or karma, shaking off the dust of former deeds, the stable one, unselfish, steady, has no need to address people. So this monk, because of past life karma, he was suffering painful feelings. The next sutta is 3.2, Nanda Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Nanda, the Lord's half-brother, the son of his maternal aunt, informed a number of monks thus, I am discontented with leading the holy life, friends. I am unable to endure the holy life. I will give up the training and return to the low life. Low life meaning the lay life. Then a certain monk approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, The Venerable Nanda, revered sir, the Lord's half-brother, the son of his maternal aunt, informed a number of monks thus, I am discontented with leading the holy life, etc. I will give up the training and return to the low life. Then the Lord addressed a certain monk, Come monk, in my name tell the monk Nanda, the teacher calls you friend Nanda. Very well, revered sir, that monk replied. And approaching the Venerable Nanda, he said, The teacher calls you friend Nanda. Very well, friend, the Venerable Nanda replied. And approaching the Lord, he prostrated himself and sat down to one side. The Lord then said to him, Is it true, Nanda, that you inform a number of monks thus, I am discontented with leading the holy life, etc. I will return to the low life. And he said, Yes, revered sir. And the Buddha asked, But why, Nanda, are you discontented with leading the holy life? And he said, On departing from home, revered sir, a Sakyan girl, the loveliest in the land, with her hair half combed, looked up at me and said, May you return soon, Master. Recollecting that, revered sir, I am discontented with leading the holy life. I am unable to endure the holy life. I will give up the training and return to the low life. Then the Lord took the Venerable Nanda by the arm, and just as a strong man might extend his flexed arm, or flex his extended arm, even so did they vanish from the Jeta wood and appear among the devas of the Tavatimsa heaven. Now on that occasion, about 500 pink-footed nymphs had come to minister to Sakka, Devaraja. And the Lord said to the Venerable Nanda, Do you see those 500 pink-footed nymphs? Yes, revered sir, he replied. And the Buddha said, What do you think, Nanda? Who is more beautiful, more fair to behold, and more alluring, that Sakyan girl, the loveliest in the land, or these 500 pink-footed nymphs? And Nanda replied, Revered sir, compared to these 500 pink-footed nymphs, that Sakyan girl, the loveliest in the land, is like a mutilated she-monkey that has had its ears and nose chopped off. She does not count. She is not worth a fraction compared to them. There is no comparison. These 500 nymphs are far more beautiful, far more fair to behold, and more alluring. And the Buddha said, rejoice, Nanda, rejoice, Nanda. I guarantee you that you will obtain 500 pink-footed nymphs. And Nanda said, if, revered sir, the Lord guarantees that I will obtain 500 pink-footed nymphs, I shall be content in living the holy life under the Lord. Then the Lord took the Venerable Nanda by the arm. Even so did they vanish from among the devas of the Tavatimsa heaven and appear in the Jeta wood. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is telling him, if you continue as a monk, you practice the holy life, when you pass away, you will have these 500 devis for your wives. So then he said, if that's the case, I will continue to lead the holy life. The monks heard. It is said that the Venerable Nanda, the Lord's half-brother, the son of his maternal aunt, is living the holy life for the sake of nymphs. They said that the Lord has guaranteed that he will obtain 500 pink-footed nymphs. Then the monk friends of the Venerable Nanda went about calling him hireling and menial, saying, the Venerable Nanda is a hireling, the Venerable Nanda is a menial. He is living the holy life for the sake of nymphs. It is said that the Lord has guaranteed that he will obtain 500 pink-footed nymphs. Then the Venerable Nanda was humiliated, ashamed and dismayed by his friends calling him hireling and menial. Living alone, secluded, diligent, ardent and resolute, he soon realized, even here and now, through his own direct knowledge, that unequaled goal of the holy life, for the sake of which sons of good family rightly go forth from home to the homeless state, and entering into it, he abode in it. And he knew, finished his birth, lived is the holy life, done is what had to be done. There is no more of this state. And the Venerable Nanda became one of the Arahants. Then when the night was far advanced, a certain Devata of surpassing beauty, illuminating the whole Jeta wood, approached the Lord, prostrated himself and stood to one side. Standing there, that Devata said to the Lord, the Venerable Nanda, revered sir, the Lord's half-brother, the son of his maternal aunt, by the ending of the asavas, has realized here and now, through his own direct knowledge, the taintless liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom, and entering into it, he abides in it. The knowledge also arose in the Lord. Nanda, by the ending of the asavas, has realized here and now the taintless liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom, and entering into it, he abides in it. When that night had ended, the Venerable Nanda approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said to the Lord, revered sir, as to the Lord's guarantee that I will obtain 500 pink-footed nymphs, I release the Lord from that promise. And the Buddha said, but Nanda, comprehending your mind with my mind, I knew Nanda has realized here and now the taintless liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom. Also a Devata told me, the Venerable Nanda, revered sir, has realized here and now the taintless liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom. When Nanda, your mind was released from the asavas without grasping, I was then released from that promise. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance, that monk who has crossed the mire, crushed the thorn of sensual desire, and reached the destruction of delusion, is not perturbed by pleasures and pains. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see, for anyone to obtain liberation, to destroy the cycle of birth and death, is always to crush the thorn of sensual desire. It is sensual desire, meaning the sights, sounds, smells, taste, touch, basically, and also sometimes the mind objects. So anything that we desire in the world, that is the thing that binds us to samsara. So if we want to get released from samsara, anything that gives delight in the world, the person on the spiritual path sees it as a danger, is something not desirable, while worldly people will see it as desirable. Whatever worldly people see as desirable, a person seriously on the spiritual path will see it as undesirable. Just the opposite. Now we come to 3.3, Yasoja Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi, the Jeta wood at another Pindika's monastery. On that occasion, about 500 monks, headed by Yasoja, had arrived at Savatthi to see the Lord. As these incoming monks were exchanging greetings with the resident monks, and lodgings were being arranged, and bowls and robes put away, there was a loud noise, a great noise. Then the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda. Ananda, what is that loud noise, that great noise? It sounds like fishermen landing a catch of fish. And Venerable Ananda said, about 500 monks headed by Yasoja, revered sir, have arrived at Savatthi to see the Lord. And as these incoming monks were exchanging greetings, etc., there was a loud noise, a great noise. And the Buddha said, well then, Ananda, in my name tell those monks, the teacher calls the Venerable Ones. Yes, revered sir, the Venerable Ananda replied. And approaching those monks, he said, the teacher calls the Venerable Ones. Very well, friend, those monks replied to the Venerable Ananda. And approaching the Lord, they prostrated themselves and sat down to one side. The Lord then said to those monks, monks, why was there that loud noise, that great noise which sounded like fishermen landing a catch of fish? The Venerable Yasoja replied, these 500 monks, revered sir, have arrived at Savatthi to see the Lord. As these incoming monks were exchanging greetings, etc., there was a loud noise, a great noise. And the Buddha said, go away, monks, I dismiss you. You ought not to stay near me. Very well, revered sir, those monks replied to the Lord. Then rising from their seats, they prostrated themselves before the Lord, keeping their right side toward him. Having set their lodgings in order and taking the bowls and robes, they departed on tour for the Vaji territory. Walking on tour by stages among the Vajis, they approached the river Vagumuda, and beside the river Vagumuda, they constructed leaf huts and commenced the rain's retreat. Stop here for a moment. You see, a lot of people think during the Buddha's time, the monks do nothing except meditate. To stay in the kuti also, they have to build their own kuti. They constructed leaf huts. That means atap huts. And for the 3 months. Then the Venerable Yasoja addressed those monks who were commencing the rain's retreat. Friends, the Lord dismisses us out of compassion, wishing our good, wishing to benefit us, being compassionate. Come, friends, let the soul abide, that the Lord will be pleased with our way of living. Very well, friend, those monks replied to the Venerable Yasoja. And living secluded, diligent, ardent and resolute, those monks within that very rain's retreat all realized the 3 knowledges. Stop here for a moment. That means within the 3 months of the Vasa, they attained the 3 knowledges. The first one is recollection of past lives. The second one is the divine eye or heavenly eye, which they used to see beings passing away and taking rebirth according to karma. And the third knowledge is destruction of the asavas. Then the Lord, having stayed at Savatthi as long as he wanted, departed on tour for Vesali. Walking on tour by stages, the Lord arrived at Vesali and stayed there near Vesali in the great wood in the hall of the gable house. Then the Lord, comprehending the mind of those monks beside the river Vagumuda with his mind, and having given consideration to it, addressed the Venerable Ananda. This direction, Ananda, seems to me as if it has become light. This direction, Ananda, seems to me as if it has become radiant. It is agreeable for me to go and consider that direction, where those monks are staying beside the river Vagumuda. Ananda, you should send a messenger to the monks beside the river Vagumuda to say, the teacher calls the Venerable Ones. The teacher wishes to see the Venerable Ones. Very well, revered sir, the Venerable Ananda replied to the Lord. Approaching a certain monk, he said to him, come friend, go to the monks beside the river Vagumuda and tell them, the teacher calls the Venerable Ones. The teacher wishes to see the Venerable Ones. Very well, friend, that monk replied to the Venerable Ananda. Then just as a strong man might extend his flexed arm, or flex his extended arm, even so did he vanish from the hall of the gable house in the great wood and appear before those monks beside the river Vagumuda. He said to them, the teacher calls the Venerable Ones. The teacher wishes to see the Venerable Ones. Stop here for a moment. So this Venerable Ananda went to get this monk who has psychic power to go and contact those monks beside the river Vagumuda. So the monk just vanished from this Vesali and appeared there and passed the message to them. Very well, friend, those monks replied. Then having set their lodgings in order and taking the bowls and robes, just as a strong man might extend his flexed arm or flex his extended arm, etc., even so did they vanish from beside the river Vagumuda and appear before the Lord in the great wood in the hall of the gable house. At that time the Lord was sitting in imperturbable concentration. Then those monks thought, in what state is the Lord now abiding? Then those monks thought, the Lord is abiding in the state of imperturbability, and they too all sat in imperturbable concentration. Stop here for a moment. Imperturbable concentration refers to the fourth jhana and the arupas. The first three jhanas are still perturbable, still boleh goyang, not so strong, but the fourth is unshakable, imperturbable. Then when the night was far advanced and the first watch had ended, the Venerable Ananda rose from his seat, arranged his robe over one shoulder, raised his folded hands and said to the Lord, the night is far advanced, revered sir. The first watch has ended, that means 10 p.m. And the incoming monks have been sitting for a long time. Revered sir, let the Lord greet the incoming monks. When this was said, the Lord remained silent. When the night was still further advanced and the middle watch had ended, that means 2 a.m., a second time the Venerable Ananda rose from his seat and said to the Lord, the night is far advanced, revered sir. The middle watch has ended and the incoming monks have been sitting for a long time. Revered sir, let the Lord greet the incoming monks. For a second time the Lord remained silent. When the night was yet further advanced and the last watch had ended, that means 6 a.m., when dawn was approaching and the night was drawing to a close, a third time the Venerable Ananda rose from his seat and said to the Lord, the night is far advanced, revered sir, the last watch has ended, dawn is approaching and the night is drawing to a close. The incoming monks have been sitting for a long time. Revered sir, let the Lord greet the incoming monks. Then the Lord emerged from that concentration and addressed the Venerable Ananda. If you knew Ananda, you would not speak in such a way. These 500 monks and I, Nanda, have all been sitting in imperturbable concentration. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Who has mastered the thorn of sensual desire, abuse, punishment, imprisonment, that monk stands steady as a mountain, desireless, not perturbed by pleasures and pains. Next Sutta 3.4, Sariputta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood in Anatha Pindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta was sitting cross-legged, not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, having set up mindfulness before him. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta sitting cross-legged, not far away, holding his body erect, having set up mindfulness before him. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Just as a mountain made of solid rock stands firm and unshakable, even so, when delusion is destroyed, a monk like a mountain, is not perturbed. 3.5 Mahamoggallana Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, the Venerable Mahamoggallana was sitting cross-legged, not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, having mindfulness with regard to the body well established within him. The Lord saw the Venerable Mahamoggallana sitting cross-legged, not far away, holding his body erect, having mindfulness with regard to the body well established within him. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. With mindfulness of the body established, controlled over contact's sixfold base, a monk who is always concentrated can know Nibbana for himself. 3.6 Nandavagga Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. On that occasion the Venerable Nandavagga went about calling the monks outcasts. Stop here for a moment. This outcast is the lowest of society. In India, they have 4 castes. The Khattiya, the warrior caste, the Brahmin caste. Khattiya is supposed to be higher, although the Brahmins think that they are higher. The second is the Brahmins. The third is the Pesas, the merchants. The fourth is the Sudras, the worker class. So these outcasts, they are so low, they are out of these 4 castes. So a monk is also an outcast. A monk has no caste. So this Nandavagga, he liked to call all the other monks outcasts. To put it roughly, in our Malaysian language, paria. Paria. Now, a number of monks approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and told him, "Revered Sir, the Venerable Nandavagga is going about calling the monks outcasts." Then the Lord addressed a certain monk, saying, "Come, monk, in my name tell the monk Nandavagga, the teacher calls you friend Nandavagga." "Very well, revered Sir," that monk replied to the Lord. And approaching the Venerable Nandavagga, he said, "The teacher calls you friend." "Very well, friend," the Venerable Nandavagga replied. And approaching the Lord, he prostrated himself and sat down to one side. The Lord then said to the Venerable Nandavagga, "Is it true, Vajja, that you go about calling the monks outcasts?" "Yes, revered Sir." Then the Lord, on giving consideration to Nandavagga's former lives, addressed the monks, "Do not be irritated, monks, with the monk Vajja. It is not with inner hatred that Vajja goes about calling the monks outcasts. For 500 births without interruption, the monk Vajja has been born in the Brahmin caste, and thus for a long time he has been habituated to calling others outcasts. It is because of this that Vajja goes about calling the monks outcasts." Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "In whom there is neither fraud nor conceit, who is without greed, unselfish, desireless, with anger quelled, his mind quenched, he is a Brahmana, he is a recluse, he is a monk." That's the end of the sutta. So this monk, Nandavagga, he is already an Arahant. So when the Buddha read his mind, knew that he had no hate. There's been a Brahmin. These Brahmins, they look down on other castes. They have this habit of looking down on other castes, calling other castes dark-footed offsprings from Brahma's feet. So because of habit. Okay, anything to discuss the last 6 sutta? To wait a while, once there's light, to wait. No need to talk to people. That means an arahant. He doesn't do any karma anymore, has left behind all karma, doesn't do any karma anymore because he has no self. And shaking off the dust of former karma, he has no need to talk to people. Okay, to continue, 3.7, Kassapa Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. On that occasion, the Venerable Mahakassapa was staying in the Pipali cave, sitting cross-legged for 7 days, having attained a certain state of concentration. Then at the end of those 7 days, the Venerable Mahakassapa emerged from that concentration. After emerging, the Venerable Mahakassapa thought, what if I should enter Rajagaha for alms food? At that time, 500 Devatas were busily preparing alms food for the Venerable Mahakassapa. But having refused the offerings of those 500 Devatas, the Venerable Mahakassapa robed himself in the forenoon, that means in the morning, and taking his bowl and outer robe, entered Rajagaha for alms food. On that occasion, Sakka Devaraja, wishing to give alms food to the Venerable Mahakassapa, assumed the appearance of a weaver, weaving at a loom, while Suja, the Asura maiden, filled the shuttle. Now the Venerable Mahakassapa, walking for alms food in Rajagaha on an uninterrupted alms round, that means house to house, not missing any house, came to the dwelling of Sakka Devaraja. Seeing the Venerable Mahakassapa coming from afar, Sakka Devaraja came out of the house and went to meet him. Taking the bowl from his hand and going into the house, he took boiled rice from a pot, filled the bowl and gave it to the Venerable Mahakassapa. And this alms food included various kinds of curry, various kinds of sauce, curry of various kinds of excellent taste and flavors. Then the Venerable Mahakassapa thought, who is this being who has such supernormal potency and power? Then the Venerable Mahakassapa thought, is it not Sakka Devaraja? Realizing it was, he said, this is your doing, Kosya. Do not do such a thing again. Kosya is one of the names of Sakka Devaraja. And Sakka said, we too need merit, revered Kassapa. We too should make merit. Then Sakka Devaraja, having prostrated himself to the Venerable Mahakassapa, keeping his right side towards him, rose into the air. While suspended in the sky, 3 times he uttered this inspired utterance, the best alms giving on Kassapa, alms is well donated. The Lord, with divine hearing, purified and surpassing that of humans, heard Sakka Devaraja suspended in the sky, uttering 3 times this inspired utterance. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. The Devas hold dear such a monk who collects his food on alms round, self-sufficient, supporting no other, who is calm and ever mindful. This Mahakassapa is a very ascetic monk. Even though he's supposed to be much older than the Buddha. And then when the Buddha was nearly 80 years old or 80 years old, Mahakassapa was much older and he was still staying in the forest, alone staying in the forest. Staying in the forest in the winters, it's very cold. So the Buddha invited him to come and stay in the monastery. He said no. He said for 2 reasons. He said one is he finds it pleasant to stay alone in the forest. Secondly, he said out of compassion for future generations of people, to let people know a real good monk who stay alone in the forest. So the Devas like to do dana on him because he's a arahant, and also because they admire him for being so ascetic. So 500 Devatas want to offer him refuse. He knew that they were Devas, he refused to accept. So this Deva, Sakka Devaraja, have to pretend to be a human being, took the form of a human being. This weaver, during the Buddha's time, They are not so lucky like nowadays. We can get cloth anytime we want. For them, they have to make cloth. So this Suja is the wife, the daughter of the Asura king. The wife was, filling the shuttle. That means feeding the thread. Feeding the thread. Then he was making the cloth. So he pretended to come out and offer food to the Mahakasapa. 3.8 Alms Food Collector Pindapatika Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, after the meal, on returning from collecting alms food, a number of monks had gathered together in the Kareri tree pavilion when this topic of conversation arose. An alms food collecting monk, friends, while walking for alms fruit, from time to time gets to see agreeable forms with the eye. From time to time gets to hear agreeable sounds with the ear. From time to time gets to smell agreeable odors with the nose. From time to time gets to taste agreeable flavors with the tongue. From time to time gets to touch agreeable tangible objects with the body. An alms food collecting monk, friends, when he walks for alms food, is respected, revered, honored, venerated, and given homage. Come friends, let us all be alms food collectors, and we too from time to time will get to see agreeable forms with the eye, etc. And we too will be respected, revered, honored, venerated, and given homage when we walk for alms food. And this conversation of those monks continued without coming to an end. Then the Lord, emerging from seclusion in the evening, went to the Kareri tree pavilion and sat down on the seat prepared for him. Sitting there, the Lord asked the monks, "What were you talking about just now, monks, while gathered here together? What was the topic of discussion that you had left unfinished?" And they said, "After the meal, revered sir, on returning from collecting alms food, we had gathered here in the Kareri tree pavilion when this topic of conversation arose. An alms food collecting monk, friends, while walking for alms food, from time to time gets to see agreeable forms with the eye, etc. And we too will be respected, revered, etc. when we walk for alms food. This, revered sir, was our discussion that was left unfinished when the Lord arrived." And the Buddha said, "It is not right, monks, that you, sons of good family, who have gone forth out of faith from home to the homeless state, should talk on such a topic. When you have gathered together, monks, you should do one of two things: either engage in talk on Dhamma, or maintain noble silence." Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "The Devas hold dear such a monk who collects his food on alms round, self-sufficient, supporting no other, but not if he is intent on praise and fame." So the Devas respect a monk who collects his alms food to practice the holy life. But if he thinks he wants to be an alms food gatherer just to get praise and fame, then the Devas will not respect him. Just like these monks were talking about, if we go on Pindapata, people will respect us. 3.9 Sippa Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, a number of monks had gathered together in the Kareri tree pavilion, and this topic of conversation arose. Who, friend, knows a craft? Who is trained in what craft? Which craft is the chief of crafts? Herein some said, elephant craft is the chief of crafts. Some said, horsemanship is the chief of crafts. Some said, chariot craft. Some said, archery, swordsmanship, communicating by gestures, accountancy, mathematics, the art of writing, the art of poetry, the art of debate, political science is the chief of crafts, etc. And this conversation of those monks continued without coming to an end. Then the Lord, emerging from seclusion in the evening, went to the Kareri tree pavilion, and similarly he rebuked the monks. It is not right, monks, that you should talk on such a topic. When you have gathered together, monks, you should do one of two things: either engage in talk on Dhamma, or maintain noble silence. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: who lives by no craft, unburdened, desiring the goal, with restrained faculties, wholly released, wandering homeless, unselfish, desireless, conceit abandoned, solitary, he is a monk. The Buddha said a monk should wander homeless, etc., and have no craft. 3.10, examining, this is Loka Volokana Sutta, examining the world. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying at Uruvela beside the river Naranjara at the foot of the Bodhi tree, having just realized full enlightenment. At that time the Lord sat cross-legged for 7 days, experiencing the bliss of liberation. Then at the end of those 7 days, the Lord emerged from that concentration and examined the world with the Buddha eye. While examining the world with the Buddha eye, the Lord saw beings tormented by various torments and consumed by various feverish longings, born of passion, hatred, and delusion. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: the world is subject to torment, afflicted by contact. It calls a disease self, for however it is conceived, it is ever otherwise than that. Becoming something other, the world is held by being, is afflicted by being, yet delights in being. But what it delights in brings fear, and what it fears is suffering. Now this holy life is lived in order to abandon being. Whatever recluses and Brahmins have said that freedom from being comes about through some kind of being, none of them, I say, are freed from being. And whatever recluses and Brahmins have said that escape from being comes about through non-being, none of them, I say, have escaped from being. This suffering arises dependent upon clinging. With the ending of all grasping or attachment, no suffering is produced. Look at the people in the world, afflicted by ignorance, come into being, delighting in being, not free. Whatever forms of being exist, in any way, anywhere, all these forms of being are impermanent, subject to suffering, of a nature to change. On seeing this as it actually is, with perfect wisdom, the craving for being is abandoned. Yet one does not delight in non-being. Nibbana is total dispassion and cessation, attained with the complete destruction of cravings. A monk whose cravings are extinguished by not grasping has no renewal of being. Mara is vanquished. The battle is won. The stable one has passed beyond all forms of being. This being, bhava, refers to the I am. When you think I am or I exist, then a being comes into existence. So sometimes the word bhava is translated as being or becoming or existence. In Chinese, this is you. You. Anything to discuss before we go to the next chapter? He's aiming to get out of the cycle of rebirth, but he may not get it immediately. Might be a few lifetimes. No. Once you attain supramundane merit, that means you become, you attain one of the stages of Aryahood. That is not reversible. If one does not attain one of the Aryan stages, then he will still go on this endless round of birth and death, and you may not meet the Dhamma in your next life. But if you have attained even the lowest level of Aryahood, say the first path, before the person dies, it will turn to fruit. When you attain path, before you die, it must turn to fruit. And then even the lowest, the Sotapanna, he has maximum of 7 more lifetimes, 7 more births. That's the maximum. And he won't be reborn in the 3 woeful planes of existence. He'll only come back as a human being or as a heavenly being. And even he comes back as a human being, he will have a lot of blessings. He will have a good life. So the amount of suffering left is very little once you become an Arya. But if you have not become an Arya, the amount of suffering is uncountable, because you don't know when you're going to come out of samsara. Okay, now we go to chapter 4, Meghivagga. 4.1, Meghiya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying at Chalika, on Chalika hill. At that time the Venerable Meghiya was the Lord's attendant. Then the Venerable Meghiya approached the Lord, prostrated himself, stood to one side and said, I wish to go into Jantu village for alms food, revered sir. And the Buddha said, do now, Meghiya, what you think it is time to do. Then the Venerable Meghiya, having put on his robe in the forenoon and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Jantu village for alms food. Having walked in Jantu village for alms food, after the meal, on returning from collecting alms food, he approached the bank of the river Kimikala. As he was walking and wandering up and down beside the river for exercise, he saw a pleasant and charming mango grove. On seeing it, he thought, this mango grove is very pleasant and charming. It is eminently suitable for the endeavor of a young man of good family who is intent on the endeavor. If the Lord were to give me permission, I would come and endeavor or strive in this mango grove. Then the Venerable Meghiya approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, Revered sir, having put on my robe in the forenoon, etc., I approached the bank of the river Kimikala and saw a pleasant and charming mango grove. On seeing it, I thought, this mango grove is very pleasant and charming. It is eminently suitable for the endeavor of a young man of good family who is intent on the endeavor. If the Lord were to give me permission, I would come and strive in this mango grove. If, revered sir, the Lord gives me permission, I would go to that mango grove to strive. When this was said, the Lord replied to the Venerable Meghiya, as we are alone, Meghiya, wait a while until some other monk comes. In other words, the Buddha wants him to accompany the Buddha, attend to the Buddha. A second time, the Venerable Meghiya said to the Lord, Revered sir, the Lord has nothing further that should be done, and nothing to add to what has been done. But for me, revered sir, there is something further that should be done, and something to add to what has been done. If, revered sir, the Lord gives me permission, I would go to that mango grove to strive. A second time, the Lord replied to the Venerable Meghiya, as we are alone, Meghiya, wait a while until some other monk comes. A third time, the Venerable Meghiya said to the Lord, Revered sir, the Lord has nothing further that should be done, etc., etc. I would go to that mango grove to strive. And the Buddha said, as we are talking of striving, Meghiya, what can I say? Do now, Meghiya, what you think it is time to do. Then the Venerable Meghiya rose from his seat, prostrated himself before the Lord, and keeping his right side towards him, went to the mango grove. On entering the mango grove, he sat down at the foot of a certain tree for the rest period during the middle of the day. Now while the Venerable Meghiya was staying in that mango grove, there kept occurring to him 3 bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts: sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts. The Venerable Meghiya then reflected, "It is indeed strange, it is indeed remarkable. Although I have gone forth out of faith from home to the homeless state, yet I am overwhelmed by these three bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts: sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts." Then the Venerable Meghiya, on emerging from seclusion in the late afternoon, approached the Lord, prostrated himself, sat down to one side and said, "Revered Sir, while I was staying in that mango grove, there kept occurring to me three bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts. And I thought, it is indeed strange, I am overwhelmed by these three bad, unwholesome kinds of thoughts: sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, and cruel thoughts." And the Buddha said, "When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, 5 things lead to its maturity." What 5? Here, Meghiya, a monk has good friends, or a good friend, good associates, good companions. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, this is the first thing that leads to its maturity. Stop here for a moment. This good friend is Kalyana Mitta. I think in Chinese they translate it as San Zhi Si, good knowing advisor. In other words, a good spiritual friend, a good spiritual teacher. Furthermore, Meghiya, a monk is virtuous. He lives restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha, the precepts of a monk. Endowed with conduct and resort, seeing danger in the smallest faults, he trains in the training rules he has accepted. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, this is the second thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Meghiya, a monk obtains at will, with no trouble or difficulty, talk that is effacing, a help in opening up the mind, and which conduces to complete turning away dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is, talk about fewness of wishes, talk about contentment, talk about seclusion, talk about non-gregariousness, talk about putting forth energy, talk about virtue, talk about concentration, talk about wisdom, talk about liberation, talk about knowledge and vision of liberation. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, this is the third thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Meghiya, a monk lives with energy instigated for the abandoning of unwholesome states and the acquiring of wholesome states. He is vigorous, energetic, and persevering with regard to wholesome states. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, this is the fourth thing that leads to its maturity. Furthermore, Meghiya, a monk is wise, endowed with the noble one's penetrative understanding of rise and disappearance or cessation, leading to the complete ending of suffering. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, this is the fifth thing that leads to its maturity. When liberation by mind is as yet immature, Meghiya, these 5 things lead to its maturity. It is to be expected of a monk who has good friends, or a good friend, a good associate, a good companion, that he will be virtuous, that he will live restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha rules, endowed with conduct and resort, and seeing danger in the smallest faults. He will train the training rules he has accepted. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will obtain at will, with no trouble or difficulty, talk that is effacing, a help in opening up the mind, etc. Talk about knowledge and vision of liberation. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will live with energy instigated, vigorous, energetic, and persevering with regard to wholesome states. It is to be expected of a monk who has a good friend that he will be wise, endowed with the noble one's penetrative understanding of rise and cessation, leading to the complete ending of suffering. A monk, Meghiya, who is established in these 5 things, should also cultivate 4 additional things. Foulness or unattractiveness should be cultivated for overcoming lust. Loving kindness should be cultivated for overcoming malevolence or ill will. Anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath, should be cultivated for cutting off thinking. The perception of impermanence, anicca, should be cultivated for the removal of the conceit, I am. For when one perceives impermanence, Meghiya, the perception of no self or non-self is established. When one perceives not self, one reaches the removal of the conceit, I am, which is called Nibbana, here and now. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Trivial thoughts, subtle thoughts, mental jerkings that follow one along. Not understanding these mental thoughts, one runs back and forth with wandering mind. But having known these mental thoughts, the ardent and mindful one restrains them. An awakened one has entirely abandoned them. These mental jerkings that follow one along. That's the end of the sutta. This sutta is quite good because a lot of monks, they are impatient to practice. The Buddha asked him to wait to serve the Buddha until another monk comes along, but he was impatient. He thought there's such a nice piece of mango grove there. He thought if he goes there, it's so conducive, his mind will become concentrated immediately. But when he went there, he found surprisingly that all these thoughts was disturbing him. So the Buddha told him 5 things are very important for a monk. One is a good spiritual friend or spiritual teacher. The second one is to have a very good sila, keep the precepts very well. The third is to have Dhamma talk from somebody who is wise about the Dhamma. A lot of people think all this talk and all this studying is not important, but it is one of the conditions for liberation. Then the fourth is energetic effort. Then the fifth, the monk has to be wise, always to be able to see rise and fall, birth and cessation of everything in the world. Everything arises and ceases. 4.2 Udatta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Kusinara at Uppavattana in the sultry grove of the Malas. On that occasion a number of monks were living in forest huts not far from the Lord, and they were turbulent, arrogant, frivolous, garrulous, of loose talk, unmindful, uncomprehending, unconcentrated, with wandering minds and uncontrolled faculties. The Lord saw those monks living nearby in forest huts with wandering minds and uncontrolled faculties. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. With an unguarded body and encumbered by wrong view, overcome by lethargy and torpor, one goes along in the power of Mara. So one should be guarded in mind. One should make right thought one's domain. When he has put right view to the forefront and understood rise and fall, a monk who overcomes lethargy and torpor will forsake all bad destinations. So you see some monks, they are not ready to live alone in the forest. This is another type of impatient monks. They go to the forest and construct these huts and live there, but their minds are wandering all over the place, and they are arrogant. They think they are forest monk, and so they are not making any progress. Actually, there is one sutta in the Satipatthana Sangyutta of the Sangyutta Nikaya. There was a monk who wanted to go and live alone, so he came to the Buddha for some advice. He told the Buddha he intended to go to the forest and live alone. That means he must have completed at least 5 years of training under a teacher. Then the monk told him, the monk wanted to teach him about Satipatthana, but the monk told him that there are 2 foundations you must start with. Every person on the spiritual path needs these 2 basic foundations before you start meditating. The Buddha said the first one is moral conduct, sila. Your sila must be very pure. Secondly, right view. A lot of monks, without gaining right view, they go off and meditate. Right view comes from studying the suttas. The Buddha said very clearly, only two conditions for right view we find in the Majjhima Nikaya. Only two conditions for right view. One is the voice of another teaching you the Dhamma. You cannot get the Dhamma without you cannot get right view without somebody teaching you the Dhamma. The second one is Yoniso Manasikara, careful attention, thorough attention. Only these two conditions, and it has nothing to do with meditation. You look carefully, these two conditions has nothing to do with meditation. It is basically listening to the Dhamma with proper attention. And that's why the Buddha's disciples are all called Savakas, Senwen, hearers, listeners. Only when you listen to the Buddha's words and you get right view, you are considered Buddha's disciple. Otherwise, one day you say you are Buddhist, another day you change your religion, as has happened to many of our so-called Buddhists. So that's why here the Buddha says, encumbered by wrong view. They don't have right view, how can they go to the forest and try to meditate? 4.3 Gopala Sutta. Gopala is a cowherd. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was journeying among the people of Kosala together with a large sangha of monks. Then the Lord stepped off the road and going up to the foot of a tree, he sat down on a seat prepared for him. A certain cowherd approached the Lord, prostrated himself and sat down to one side. The Lord then instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened that cowherd with a talk on Dhamma. And that cowherd, being instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened by the Lord's talk on Dhamma, said to the Lord, please consent, revered sir, to my providing a meal tomorrow for the Lord together with the sangha of monks. The Lord consented by remaining silent. Then on seeing that the Lord had consented, the cowherd arose from his seat, prostrated himself before the Lord, and keeping his right side toward him, went away. When the night had ended, the cowherd prepared in his own dwelling a large quantity of thick rice gruel boiled in milk and a quantity of fresh ghee, and announced to the Lord the time for the meal, saying, it is time, revered sir, the meal is ready. You see, last time people eat very simply, rice with milk, that's all. Nowadays we have so much variety of food, we get stomach upset from eating too many different types of food. Then the Lord, putting on his robe in the forenoon and taking his bowl and outer robe, together with the sangha of monks, went to the dwelling of that cowherd. On arriving, he sat down on the seat prepared for him. Then the cowherd, with his own hand, served and satisfied the sangha of monks headed by the Buddha with the thick rice gruel and fresh ghee. Then when the Lord had eaten and removed his hand from the bowl, the cowherd chose a low seat and sat down to one side. The Lord then instructed, roused, inspired and gladdened that cowherd with a talk on Dhamma, and then arose from his seat and departed. Now, not long after the Lord had departed, a certain man murdered that cowherd along the village boundary. Then a number of monks approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, revered sir, that cowherd who today with his own hand served and satisfied the sangha of monks, headed by the Buddha with thick rice gruel and fresh ghee, has been murdered. It is said by a certain man along the village boundary. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Whatever an enemy might do to an enemy, or a hater to those he hates, a wrongly directed mind can do even greater harm than that. So the person, the killer has a wrongly directed mind. 4.4 Junha Sutta, about the moonlit night. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahamoggallana were staying in the pigeon's glen. It happened that the Venerable Sariputta on a moonlit night was seated in the open air with his head newly shaved, and had attained a certain stage of concentration. At that moment, two yakas who were companions were going from north to south on some business or other, when they saw the Venerable Sariputta on the moonlit night, seated in the open air, with his head newly shaved. On seeing him, one yaka said to the other, "The idea has occurred to me, friend, to give this recluse a blow on the head." When he said this, the other yaka said, "Take care, friend, do not strike the recluse. He is a mighty recluse, friend, of great supernormal potency and power." A second time and third time, the first yaka said to the other, "The idea has occurred to me, friend, to give this recluse a blow on the head." A second time and third time, the other yaka said to him, "Take care, friend, do not strike the recluse. He is a mighty recluse, friend, of great supernormal potency and power." Then the first yaka, not heeding the warning of the other yaka, gave the Venerable Sariputta a blow on the head. And so great was the blow that it might have felled an elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits height, or split a great mountain peak. Thereupon that yaka, crying out, I am burning, instantly fell into the great hell. The Venerable Mahamoggallana, with divine vision, purified and surpassing that of humans, saw that yaka giving the Venerable Sariputta a blow on the head. On seeing this, he approached the Venerable Sariputta and said, "Are you well, friend? Are you bearing up? Have you any pain?" And he said, "I am well, friend Moggallana. I am bearing up, friend Moggallana, although I do have a slight headache." And Venerable Mahamoggallana said, "It is wonderful, friend Sariputta. It is marvelous, friend Sariputta. How great is the supernormal potency and power of the Venerable Sariputta. Just now, friend Sariputta, a certain yaka gave you a blow on the head, and so great was the blow it might have felled an elephant 7 or 7.5 cubits high, or split a great mountain peak. And yet the Venerable Sariputta just says, I am well, friend Moggallana. I am bearing up, friend Moggallana, although I do have a slight headache." This cubit is a 4 arms length, about a foot or more. And Venerable Sariputta said, "It is wonderful, friend Moggallana. It is marvelous, friend Moggallana. How great is the supernormal potency and power of the Venerable Mahamoggallana, in that he can actually see a yaka. Now, we could not even see a mud sprite. The Lord, with divine hearing, purified and surpassing that of humans, heard this conversation of these two great perfected ones. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "Whose mind stands like a mountain, steady, it is not perturbed, unattached to things that arouse attachment, unangered by things that provoke anger. When his mind is cultivated thus, how can suffering come to him?" So you see from this sutta, don't simply go and meditate alone in any mountain or lonely place. You might get a blow on the head. 4.5, the Bull Elephant Naga Sutta. This word Naga can mean is a snake spirit, can mean a big bull elephant. Thus have I heard. At one can also mean a hero, kind of. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Kosambi at the Gosita monastery. At that time the Lord was living hemmed in by monks and nuns, by male and female lay followers, by kings and royal ministers, by sectarian teachers and their disciples. And he lived in discomfort and not at ease. Then the Lord thought, at present I am living hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., and I live in discomfort and not at ease. Suppose I were to live alone, secluded from the crowd. Then the Lord, having put on his robe in the forenoon and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Kosambi for alms food. Having walked for alms food in Kosambi and returned after the meal, he set his lodgings in order by himself, took his bowl and cloak, and without informing his attendant or taking leave of the Sangha of monks, he set off alone without a companion for Parilayaka. Walking on tour by stages, he arrived at Parilayaka and stayed near Parilayaka in a protected forest at the foot of an auspicious sal tree. Now a certain bull elephant was living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, by elephant calves and sucklings. He ate grass with the tips pulled off, and they ate the branches he had broken down. He drank muddied water, and on going down and coming out of the water, he was jostled by she-elephants, and he lived in discomfort and not at ease. Then that bull elephant thought, at present I am living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, by elephant calves and sucklings. I eat grass with the tips pulled off, and they eat the branches which I break down. I drink muddied water, and on going down and coming out of the water, I am jostled by she-elephants, and I live in discomfort and not at ease. Suppose I were to live alone, secluded from the crowd. So that bull elephant left the herd and went to Parilayaka, to the protected forest, and approached the Lord at the foot of the auspicious sal tree. On reaching the place where the Lord was staying, that bull elephant kept the place free of grass and brought water with his trunk for the Lord's use. Then while the Lord was in solitude and seclusion, this thought arose in his mind. Formerly I was living hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., and I was living in discomfort and not at ease. But now I live not hemmed in by monks and nuns, etc., in comfort and at ease. And also this thought arose in that bull elephant's mind. Formerly I was living hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, etc., and I was living in discomfort and not at ease. But now I live not hemmed in by elephants and she-elephants, etc. I eat unbroken grass, and others do not eat the branches which I break down. I drink clear water, and on going down and coming out of the water, I am not jostled by she-elephants, and I live in comfort and at ease. Then the Lord, on observing his own solitude, understood with his mind the thought in the mind of that bull elephant, and uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. This unites mind with mind, the perfected one and the bull elephant, with tusks as long as chariot poles, that each delights in being alone in the forest. This sutta has been expanded a bit in other books, I think like Dhammapada commentary, where they say even a monkey also came to serve the Buddha together with the elephant. 4.6 Pindola Sutta. Thus have I heard, at one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood in Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, the Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect. A forest dweller, an alms food collector, a rag robe wearer, a tree robe wearer, that means one set only of robes. One of few wishes, contented, secluded, solitary, energetic and ascetic, devoted to the higher mind. The Lord saw the Venerable Pindola Bharadvaja sitting cross-legged not far away, devoted to the higher mind. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance, not insulting, not injuring, restrained by the patimokkha, moderation in eating, lodging in a secluded place, being intent on the higher mind. This is the instruction of the awakened ones. This Pindola Bharadvaja is mentioned in the Vinaya books. There was an occasion when a very rich man, he was curious whether there were still arahants in the world, because they were discussing whether there were still arahants in the world. So being a rich man, he decided to see whether there's any arahants in the world. So what he did was he asked his workers to get a long bamboo pole, and he hung up the bamboo pole. But at the top of the bamboo pole, he hung a sandalwood bowl, an alms bowl made completely of sandalwood, very fragrant and expensive sandalwood. So he asked everybody to pass the news around that if any monk with psychic power can fly up and take the bowl, it will belong to him. So a lot of monks passed by, none of them had psychic power to do this. But Pindola Bharadvaja, when he came, he saw that bowl and he heard what people said. He flew up, took the bowl, and then he circled the town 3 times with that bowl for everybody to see. and he came down. So he's the one with this great psychic power. But after that, the Buddha, in a way, rebuked him and forbade the monks from showing off their psychic power. 4.7 Sariputta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, being one of few wishes, contented, secluded, solitary, energetic, devoted to the higher mind. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta sitting cross-legged not far away, devoted to the higher mind. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: diligent, devoted to the higher mind, a sage trained in wisdom's ways, there are no sorrows for the stable one who is calm and ever mindful. 4.8 Sundari Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. At that time, the Lord was respected, revered, honored, venerated, and given homage, and was one who obtained the requisites of robes, alms, food, lodgings, and medicines. And the Sangha of monks was also respected, etc. But the wanderers of other sects were not respected, revered, honored, venerated, and given homage. And they did not obtain the requisites of robes, alms, food, lodgings, and medicines. Then those wanderers of other sects, unable to tolerate the respect shown towards the Lord and the Sangha of monks, approached Sundari, the woman wanderer, and said, "Sister, will you do something useful for your kinsmen?" And she asked, "What can I do, masters? What am I able to do? I would sacrifice even my life for the sake of my kinsmen." And they said, "Then, sister, go often to the Jeta wood." "Very well, masters," Sundari, the woman wanderer, replied. And she went often to the Jeta wood. Then, when those wanderers knew that Sundari, the woman wanderer, had been seen by many people going often to the Jeta wood, they murdered her and buried her there in a hole dug in a ditch of the Jeta wood. Then they went to King Pasenadi of Kosala and said, "Great king, Sundari, the woman wanderer, cannot be found." And he asked, "Where do you suspect she is?" And they said, "In the Jeta wood, great king." And the king said, "Then search the Jeta wood." On searching the Jeta wood, those wanderers dug up the body from the hole in the ditch where it had been buried, and putting it on a litter, had it taken to Savatthi. Going from street to street and from crossroad to crossroad, they aroused people's indignation by saying, "See, masters, the work of the followers of the Sakyan son. These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, are shameless, immoral, of bad conduct, liars, not livers of the holy life. They claim that they live by Dhamma, that they lead a balanced life, that they lead the holy life, that they are speakers of truth, that they are virtuous, of good conduct. But they have no status as recluses. They have no status as Brahmanas. Their recluse status is destroyed. Their Brahmana status is destroyed. Where is this recluse status? Where is this Brahmana status? They have lost their recluse status. They have lost their Brahmana status. How can a man, having taken his manly pleasures, murder a woman?" Because of this, when people saw monks in Savatthi, they reviled, abused, provoked, and annoyed them with insults and harsh words, saying, "These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan son, are shameless, immoral, of bad conduct. How can a man, having taken his manly pleasure, murder a woman?" Stop here for a moment. So these wanderers, they purposely asked this Sundari to go often to the monastery, as though she was having an affair there. And then they murdered her and claimed that she was having an affair in the monastery and was murdered, maybe because they imply she was pregnant or something. Then a number of monks, having dressed in the forenoon and taken their bowls and outer cloaks, entered Savatthi for alms food. Having walked in Savatthi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "At present, revered sir, when people see monks in Savatthi, they revile, abuse, provoke, and annoy them with insults and harsh words." And the Buddha said, "This commotion, monks, will not continue long. it will continue for only 7 days, and after 7 days it will disappear. So monks, when people revile you, abuse, provoke and annoy you with insults and harsh words, you should respond with this verse. The false accuser goes to hell, and also one who denies the deed he did. Both these become equal hereafter, persons of base actions in the world beyond. So those monks learned this verse in the Lord's presence, and when those people, on seeing monks, reviled them, they responded with the verse. Then those people thought, these recluses, the followers of the Sakyan Son, did not do it. It was not done by them. These recluses, the followers of the Sakyan Son, are asserting their innocence, and the commotion did not continue for long. The commotion continued for only 7 days, and after 7 days it disappeared. Then a number of monks approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "It is wonderful, revered Sir. It is marvelous, revered Sir. How well was this foretold by the Lord? This commotion, monks, will not continue for long. After 7 days it will disappear. Revered Sir, that commotion has disappeared." Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Uncontrolled people pierce one with words, as they pierce a battle elephant with arrows. On hearing harsh words being uttered to him, a monk should endure them without hate. 4.9 Upasena Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo wood at the squirrel's feeding place. Then while the Venerable Upasena Vanganta Putta was alone in seclusion, this thought arose in his mind. It is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me that my teacher is the Lord, Arahant Sammasambuddha, that I have gone forth from home to the homeless state in this well-taught Dhamma Vinaya, that my fellows in the holy life are virtuous and of good conduct, that I have fulfilled the moral virtues, that I am concentrated and unified of mind, that I am an Arahant who is free from the asavas, that I am of great supernormal potency and power. Fortunate has been my life, and fortunate will be my death. Stop here for a moment. So this Upasena Vanganta Putta, he had attained Arahanthood. Then on reflecting, he was very grateful that he was a disciple of the Buddha, and that his fellow monks are so virtuous, etc., that he has attained liberation also. Then the Lord understood with his mind the thought in the mind of the Venerable Upasena Vanganta Putta, and uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: whose life causes no remorse, and who sorrows not at death, the wise one who has seen that state sorrows not in the midst of sorrow. For a monk whose mind is calmed, who has destroyed the craving for being, the wandering on in births is finished. There is no further being for him. 4.10 Sariputta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect and reviewing his own state of peace. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta sitting cross-legged not far away, reviewing his own state of peace. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: for a monk whose mind is calm and peaceful, who has cut the cord of craving for being, the wandering on in births is finished. He is freed from Mara's bonds. Okay, we stop here. Anything to discuss?
Concerning Sutta 4.1, the Meghiya Sutta. And the Sutta is stated after 5 things have been cultivated, 4 additional things should be done, which is found as loving kindness, anapanasati, and the perception in impermanence. And nowadays, many meditation master teach us only select one object to develop. Would this limit our progress in the spiritual life?
Actually, in the spiritual life, depending on how serious you are, if you become a monk, Then the basic things like the Vinaya you have to learn very well. The suttas you have to learn. The duties in the monastery, the way to conduct. For example, the pavarana, entering the range, and katina and all these things. So this one is a complete training. This foulness is the asubha, unattractiveness of the body, what in Chinese we call puching guan. And then metta, this one like metta is not that every monk has to cultivate it. If you have a problem with anger, then you need to cultivate metta. If you don't have a problem with anger, it may not be necessary to cultivate metta. And then this anapanasati. This anapanasati and this unattractiveness of the body are two different meditations. So if you don't want to cultivate both, you practice one or so, it's okay. But the foulness is, even though you practice anapanasati, you still have to realize that the body is not all that attractive. Normally we only see the body skin deep only. We don't think of the inner parts of the body. But we have to know also the body is not that beautiful when you contemplate all the things inside the body. And this impermanence, that is very important. Everybody has to, if you want to attain liberation, you got to see impermanence. Only when you see impermanence, then you see dukkha and anatta, no self.
Thank you. That has stressed several times, many times, that for new monks, they should learn the rules of being a monk first, rather than going out, like Meghiya, Sutta, rather than going out and practice on their own at the start. So the problem is that these days, many of us, especially the men who start off with practicing the Dhamma center, and become serious practitioner, and they tend to practice alone. For example, when you go to different Dhamma centers and practice, they learn on their own, rather than staying put to one monastery and learn the whole books under a monk. So the mindset seems to be very much own practice rather than adapting to a community, a fixed community, and there's no sense of belonging, I feel. No sense of belonging to the monastery, where it is like short-term here and there. To get into that it's not helping future mind.
Yes. This shows the immaturity of Buddhism in our country. In Buddhist country like Thailand or Myanmar and Sri Lanka, they have a long tradition. So when a monk goes forth, he belongs to a certain tradition, and they are very proud of their tradition. And they stay within that tradition, they don't wander out of that tradition. And also they have great respect for the teacher. You can see, like in the forest monasteries of Thailand, when the monks come back from alms round, like Ajahn Chah monasteries, they wash the feet of the teacher. And if the teacher is old, they even bathe for the teacher, massage the teacher, as our Ajahn Hui Guang has described in his talk. He has to massage his teacher until very late in the night, 2 a.m. or something. So all this is discipline, but because Buddhism is not mature enough in our country, so you find a lot of monks, they want to go their own way. They don't want to to be disciplined by a teacher. When the teacher gets a bit too strict, then they run away. So they want to be independent. So when they form this habit, then they do the karma. They get the vipaka. When they are senior themselves, they find also nobody wants to follow them. But this unfortunately, that's because our country is new. So this is something we have to go through.
On one hand, we talk about some sisters as senior, good known as more senior nuns. But on the other hand, talk about companionship among nuns. Like the Buddhas, when we have people like Nanda, here go forth in like often say Lao some of them will see that like Nanda. But somehow the camaraderie is there and somehow they can help each other. So in our Malaysian context, there is very much lacking.
Yes. Because most of our monasteries, we have very few monks. When you have many monks, then it's different, and you have a long tradition. So I have stayed in Mahayana monasteries as a new monk, and I have stayed in monasteries in Thailand. I find, like in the forest monasteries of Thailand, they are more supportive. They take care of each other because they are trained by the teacher to take care of the teacher, so they also take care of each other. Whereas you find in Mahayana monasteries, they don't have this tradition. So even like in Malaysia, we have some old Mahayana monks, they have many disciples, but the disciples never live with them for long. So when they are old, their own disciples don't look after them. You can't do anything. This is just takes time, and no two monasteries are the same. So you just have to let things go the natural way. This one, all this depends on the individual. You cannot expect a monk to be like this and to be like that. That's why if you look at the history of Buddhism, you find a lot of monks, they don't want to take disciples. Taking disciples is actually a burden. So even that day I mentioned about Meghiya, the same applies with monks. If from my experience, that some people say they want to become a monk here, I find they are not qualified to be a monk, so rather not take them. Just 1 or 2 days ago, I got a call from somebody in Penang side also. He said he had been listening to my Dhamma talk and he wants to come here to become a monk. But I know a bit about his background and I know he's not a suitable candidate. So this, you can't force the thing. And the other thing I noticed that if people wear the robes after 40, it's very hard to train them. That's why, like in this Dhammakaya in Bangkok, near Bangkok, they don't accept people for monkhood after 40, because their habits are set. not willing to bend. Younger people are willing to bend themselves.
I see in the Sutta says very often the Buddha would consent silence to the offering of alms and food. Why is that? Is that considered disrespectful to say yes?
No. It must be the tradition. And also, if he says yes, then if he cannot make it, then he's telling a lie. Just like 1 or 2 days ago, we read the sutta about this. What's her name? Supavasa, the one who was pregnant for so long, and then invited the Buddha for a meal. Then the Buddha asked Moggallana to cancel another appointment. You see. So if he had said yes, then to cancel it again, it would be very. It's like telling a lie. So if he doesn't object, it means he agrees to it. If he can't make it, then he'll say he can't make it. Of course, nowadays we don't do this. It's probably an Indian tradition.
But somehow the followers seem to know.
Yeah, that's the Buddha's way of not accepting. They know.
What is the difference between cessation and non-doing, and also the difference between deliverance by mind and deliverance by wisdom?
Oh, it's a very long question. It take another Dhamma talk too. This liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom is explained in my book. I think Samatha and Vipassana. So you read that book. It shows you have not been reading my book. It's been there for so many years already. And then this cessation and cessation of being. This cessation can be cessation of greed, hatred and delusion. It can also be, which means a cessation of being. Or it can be cessation of perception and feeling. The cessation of perception and feeling is cessation of the sixth consciousness. When the sixth consciousness stops, it's also called nirodha, cessation, and cessation of perception and feeling. And in that state, where the sixth consciousness stops, there was some description of it. We read, I think yesterday, where there is no sun, no moon, and yet it's not dark. And there's no large and small, no objects. I mentioned in that state, for the normal sixth consciousness, you must have an object. The object is either sights or sounds or smells or tastes and thoughts. But in that cessation state, cessation of perception and feeling, which is cessation of consciousness, of the sixth consciousness, you have a different type of consciousness. It is bright and it is boundless and there is no object. When a person comes out of that state, he becomes an arahant. He knows that the whole world is only mind-made, like a dream. That self is also in the dream.
Maybe more about mind's life. Many people think that minds, especially the people, many think that minds are able to responsibility. This is because most of our minds live alone. So in this case, we see the minds to build their own duties, and some parts with the minds in charge. Especially you have more than 500 people living in the community. You can store that. We read earlier that the Nandavagga, he has honey and whatnot, all he sent to his relatives. And moving to the store and all. And here they have so many minds living together, so many chores to be done, which is contrary to what we think we should be imagining.
Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of people, they are used to a life of luxury, and then they come and wear the robe. Also, they think, they expect the life of luxury. But actually, during the Buddha's time, if you wear the robes, it's a very tough life. Okay, shall we end here?